We need to know what happened here. The Chinese Communist Party knows what happened here. They know who patient zero was. They know precisely where this began. These 3 individuals who became sick, the symptoms were consistent with what someone would get, that be symptomatic of if they had COVID-19, the Wuhan virus. We need to get to the bottom of this because this could happen again. They're still conducting research in these same laboratories today. It's being done in ways that were similar to what happened back over a year ago.
Former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo responding to the recent Wall Street Journal report, which revealed that 3 researchers at the Wuhan Institute of Virology were hospitalized in November of 2019 with symptoms consistent with COVID-19. Seems that nearly every step of the way the Chinese Communist Party has sought to deceive the international community, first downplaying the severity of the disease and then stonewalling efforts to uncover its origin. While the genesis of the disease is still uncertain, our next guest says that whether it came from a lab or not, China is ultimately responsible for the millions who've perished in this pandemic. Joining me now is the author of The Coming Collapse of China and the Great U.S.-China Tech War, Gordon Chang. Also follow him on Twitter at Gordon G. Chang. Gordon, great to see you.
Thank you so much, Buck.
So let's just take some of the comments here from the former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. First off, his assertion here that China knows who patient zero is and knows a lot more than they've told us. As someone who watches this very closely, Gordon, what can you tell us about your sense of that?
I think this former Secretary of State is correct. When the World Health Organization mission went to Wuhan in January and February of this year, they asked for all sorts of raw patient data, including about those 174 cases. Beijing refused to turn it over. And I think that's an indication that China knows a hell of a lot more than it is saying. And indeed, without that patient data, we won't be able to track down the source of this disease. I think that's exactly Beijing's motivation. Make sure we don't learn how this thing started.
And Gordon, what about the concern that this research, I mean, is it feasible that the Chinese Communist Party would allow gain-of-function research, the kind of virus research that people have been saying was going on in the Wuhan laboratory to begin with? Could this still be going on elsewhere? Do we know if it's continuing on elsewhere inside of Chinese borders?
Well, I'm sure that it is, Buck, but I don't actually have direct information on that. We do know that they were conducting in a number of locations gain-of-function research because, for instance, that grant from the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, Fauci's branch of the NIH, actually was funding research in the Wuhan Institute of Virology. And we know from papers that have been written that was gain-of-function experimentation. So clearly it was going on then. We know that China has a biological weapons program. So yes, of course it's going on. But for the last 3 or 4 months, there's been, at least in the open sources, no indication.
And Gordon, we had the White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki weigh in today on how they still believe the World Health Organization, this White House thinks the World Health Organization should be in charge. I wanted to have you react to these comments from the West Wing.
589,920 dead Americans. At what point does President Biden say, we don't want to wait for the WHO, we don't know what they're doing, this needs to be an American-led effort to get to the bottom of what happened?
Well, first of all, we need access to the underlying data and information in order to have that investigation.
And why not? But he talks all the time about how he's known President Xi for a long time. So why can't he just call
and we need
ask
them
him for that information?
I think you're misunderstanding how this process actually works. An international investigation led by the World Health Organization is something that we've actually been pressing for several months.
I mean, Gordon, are we ever going to get real answers if we're relying on the WHO to be in charge?
No, I just don't think the organization is built to do that. It is dominated by China. China is never going to permit that. We have seen now 3 WHO missions to Wuhan, 2 in 2020 and 1 this year, and none of them has uncovered anything of real value. They've been dominated by the Chinese side of these teams. And clearly Beijing is not allowing anyone from the WHO any real access. You know, at this particular time, you know, Jen Psaki is right in the sense that we couldn't conduct this investigation on our own, but we do have a lot of information that has not been declassified. The Biden administration can do that. But also, we know, regardless of how this disease started, we know that Xi Jinping deliberately spread this beyond his borders because there is open source information to show that they were lying about contagiousness and they were forcing countries to accept arrivals from China while they were locking down their own country. You put those two things together, Buck, there is no other explanation. China deliberately spread this disease beyond its borders.
When you say deliberately spread, Gordon, I mean, that's obviously something that gets a lot of attention. What is the full evidence, the full argument you could make in favor of that, and why would the Chinese do that?
Well, we know that Beijing only formally announced transmissibility, human-to-human transmissibility, on January 20 of last year. But doctors in Wuhan knew no later than the second week of December that this was highly contagious. Now, if Beijing had said nothing during those 5 weeks, and they probably knew earlier, but if they had said nothing during those 5 weeks, that would have been grossly irresponsible. But we also know that they told the international community it was not contagious. There's the January 9th statement from the WHO, plus the infamous January 14th tweet, which are based on information from China, that it was not a contagious disease. And then, as I mentioned, Xi Jinping was pressuring countries to take passengers from China while he was locking down Wuhan and surrounding cities. That meant by locking down, he felt he was stopping the spread of the disease, which means he knew that he was spreading the disease by having Chinese passengers go around the world. So it's just inescapable. This was a deliberate attempt. And the reason why? Well, I guess he saw his own country crippled, so he wanted to level the playing field. I suppose so. I don't know what was in Xi Jinping's mind. But we do know that they have this doctrine of comprehensive national power, ranking countries. China's goal is to be number one. And the way you get to be number one is you either strengthen your own country or you weaken everybody else. And China was weakening everybody else by spreading the disease.
Gordon, what do you think the administration's response should be, this Biden administration, if in fact the evidence, even if it's circumstantial, becomes irrefutable that this came from a lab because of Chinese research on gain of function and bat viruses, coronaviruses? What do you think the Biden administration should do?
Well, because we're now talking about 590,000 American dead, we should be imposing the most severe costs on Beijing. And, even if you don't care about compensation or justice, we have to establish deterrence. We cannot allow China to think that they can spread the next pathogen. And remember, Buck, China's working on pathogens that will leave the Chinese immune and sicken everybody else. This comes from a 2017 publication of China's National Defense University that talks about, quote, specific ethnic genetic attacks. So we're talking about the survival of our country here. So, yeah, I think we should be cutting off trade. We should be cutting off investment. We certainly should be cutting off technical cooperation. We got to start defending ourselves.